There are shows we simply watch, and then there are the ones we study. And to me, Better Call Saul is absolutely the latter. Today, I want to dive deep into the darkest, most obscure details of its narrative iceberg, the ones that I believe reveal the true, cold calculus behind the fall of Jimmy McGill, the moral paradox of Kim Wexler, and the fatalistic fate of Mike Ehrmantraut. The entire story of Jimmy McGill is not about a sudden, tragic fall, but about a slow, inevitable rot. And this, to me, is the most brilliant and terrifying idea underpinning his character. Look at this. Many compare Jimmy to Walter White, whose demise felt like a reaction to crisis and illness. But I believe Jimmy was inherently flawed from the very beginning. To understand the difference, let me give you some context. I've read a fan theory metaphor often used to describe his moral decay, the pimple metaphor. It suggests that the evil within Jimmy wasn't an abrupt explosion or reaction to trauma. It was a slow-growing formation that he stubbornly ignored for years. Pay attention to that detail. It focuses on the gradual growth, the lack of attention given to the internal problem. Unlike Walt, where there were thresholds he crossed, here it is strictly about uncontrollable decay from the inside that overwhelmingly consumes everything. I think this means Jimmy McGill's destiny was predetermined from the start. He rejected every rule Chuck tried to impose and embraced cynicism as his sole life philosophy. He was already corrupted. He just needed the license to fully indulge his true nature. This is why he so fiercely insists that rules must be broken. Here is his final, self-inflicted judgment, truly aimed at himself.
They're not going to give it to you? So what? You're going to take it. You're going to do whatever it takes. Do you hear me? You are not going to play by the rules. You're going to go your own way. You're going to do what they won't do. You're going to be smart. You are going to cut corners, and you are going to win.
That, I believe, is not just advice. It is the manifesto of Saul Goodman, born from the rejection of his own morality and his brother's legacy. Many believe that Jimmy's deepest mystery is not who he became, I mean Saul, but who he actually was. When all the masks were finally dropped, I think Slippin' Jimmy, Jimmy McGill, and even Saul Goodman were all just false personas, games he played to cope with the world. But Gene Takovich, the miserable Cinnabon manager in the black and white world of Omaha, is, I believe, the genuine naked personality. Look at this. Saul Goodman in Breaking Bad is an absolutely empty, miserable, and emotionless shell of a man. I think, before we saw him in Breaking Bad, he must have suffered trauma that left him so utterly hollowed out and ready to work for Walter White without any remorse. And that trauma, in my opinion, is unquestionably tied to Kim Wexler. Some analysts suggest that Jimmy went full Saul after the breakup with Kim, not just out of greed, but out of a perverse, desperate romance. Kim said they were poisoned together. He, I think, wanted to prove her wrong, or at least demonstrate that he could be incredibly poisonous alone, becoming Saul Goodman. I believe this was a kind of twisted love gesture. Perhaps he thought that if he sank to the absolute bottom and became the lawyer for the societal dregs, Kim, who always loved helping the little guy, would come back to him out of sympathy or a desire to save him. He could show how poisonous he can be on his own by becoming Saul Goodman fully, by helping the absolute bottom of the barrel, and appealing to Kim's desire to help the little guy. He could get her to sympathize. It's horrifying, but it explains why he doubled down on becoming Albuquerque's most despicable lawyer. Pay attention to this. When Saul disappears, the world literally becomes black and white. Saul was the color, and his vanishing left only Gene, who is essentially the remainder of the real Jimmy McGill, who must finally reckon with himself. The happiest ending he could hope for, I believe, was not escaping punishment, but finally recognizing who he is and finding a small measure of satisfaction living as Gene Takovich. It's his personal purgatory. Let's look at how the idea of fate's inevitability, this sense of predetermination, haunts Gene Takovich. I noticed how fans in their research seek out the tiniest details confirming that everything that happens in this universe is preordained. Look at the numbers. This, I think, is incredibly ominous, as these are hints scattered throughout Season 6, foreshadowing disaster. We know that early in Season 6, numbers appear that fans have found mysteriously foreshadow death or the fall of characters. Listen to this. Howard stands next to a locker numbered 7. One of Nacho's girlfriends steps on a domino with 6 and 3. Lalo stands next to Werner Ziegler's house, number 68. Fans connect these numbers to the subsequent tragedies. I believe this is not a coincidence, but the way the show's creators hint at the inevitable course of events. And here is the most chilling detail I found concerning Jean. When Jean is in the hallway in the 10th episode of Season 6, the clock is pointing to 9 and 4. Fans added these numbers up. 9 plus 4 equals 13. In cinematic storytelling, the number 13 often symbolizes bad luck, disaster, or death. To me, these are not just random numbers. I believe this is the universe telling him, your karma will catch up to you. Jean's fate is predetermined, and these numbers are just a reminder that he will not escape his destiny, even if he chooses freedom through accountability. This is the ultra-fatalism that I find so fascinating in this show. If Jimmy was the slow-growing pimple, then Kim, I believe, is a deeply hidden, perfectly polished bomb. Her character, in my opinion, is one of the most complex moral paradoxes in the entire series. She is simultaneously the embodiment of compassion, devoting herself to pro bono cases to help the disenfranchised, and the source of cold, calculated cruelty, especially towards Howard. But to understand why she is this way, let me give you the context of her moral license. I think that she becomes so secure in her status as a good person through her good deeds that her moral compass paradoxically weakens. It is as if she is earning the right to be evil. She needs this certainty in her own goodness to justify her dark indulgences. She can afford to be bad because she has already done so much good. I think she justified it by thinking, I am saving so many people. I can afford to ruin Howard's life, who perhaps even deserves it because he is rich and arrogant, and his fall will not affect my main mission. This is not just justification. It is different, a moral license to indulge her hidden passion for hustling. She loves scamming. She finds pleasure in it. It's fun, it's decadent, it's gratifying, even sexually. Pay attention to that fact. Her good deeds allow her to live with this without considering herself completely corrupted. Many analysts, and I tend to agree with them, believe that Kim is in many ways even worse than Jimmy, because her motives were colder, more calculated, and more destructive. She possessed the discipline and intellect to execute her plans with minimal error. She was the architect of catastrophe. Look at this. It was Kim who initiated the plan to destroy Howard.
We're talking about a career setback. A career setback for one lawyer.
Jimmy initially thought she was joking.
Come on, Kim. We're not talking about a bar trick here. We're talking about scorched earth.
But the thought of humiliating, conning, and harming Howard caused a morbid, almost sexual excitement in both of them. Listen to this, and you will understand how perverse this union was.
We pour a barrel of chlorine into his swimming pool, so then...
Bleaches his hair and his eyebrows and everything.
Yes, and the eyebrows.
Or...
The plot to destroy Howard was orchestrated by her. Jimmy thought she was joking at first, and the thought turned her on. They make out and make love to this sick feeling of abusing, hurting, scamming, and belittling other people. This, I believe, proves that Kim was not simply a victim of Jimmy's corruption. She was an active, even leading predator, and she enjoyed the feeling of power over others. I think her plan, which ultimately led to Howard's death, was much darker and colder than anything Jimmy's done or thought about doing. Jimmy is more about sly tricks and small cons. Kim, on the other hand, was ready to completely destroy a man's professional and personal life for personal gain, the sandpiper money, and, most terrifyingly, for entertainment. She was ready to destroy Kevin, who trusted her, and she yelled at Rich Schweikert, feigning victimhood when she was actively working against her client's interests. I believe she deserves to be behind bars even more than Jimmy, as she was more calculating and cold-blooded in her cruelty. And look at this earlier moment, which foreshadows her darkness. Remember when she threatens the Kettlemans in the early stages? It's a chilling line that shows her true strength and cruelty, and her ability to inflict deep pain.
You think you've lost everything? You have no idea.
I think that was a prophecy of her own life after she broke up with Jimmy. The idea that Kim is a hidden Walter White is not just a fan fantasy, I believe, but a subtle illusion embedded in the script. Her dark side was always there, and she enjoyed the cons not for the money, but for the high and the adrenaline rush that gave her a sense of life and control. She was addicted to the risk, to the role of Slippin' Kimmy. Look at this quote I found in my research. In one episode, when Kim talks to Jimmy about her pro bono work, she delivers a line that fans immediately compared to Walter White's final self-justifying words about his crimes.
I like it. I'm good at it. And I'm helping people.
I believe this is the moment she recognizes her addiction to the criminal high. She was slowly breaking bad on a smaller scale. Her moral compass was focused on helping the poor, which, in her mind, gave her the right not to care about the rich and powerful. That, in my opinion, was her main mistake. She thought she could control the darkness. Gustavo Fring always seemed to us like the embodiment of a cold, calculated machine, the perfect manager of the criminal underworld. But the deepest analyses I have read reveal his true motivation. It is not power, but a broken heart and a thirst for revenge. I believe that all his actions, his entire empire, are a monument to his beloved Max Arciniega. In the fan community, there is no doubt, they were more than just friends or partners. They were lovers, especially from Gus's side. This makes Gus, I think, one of the most tragic characters, because he lives a double life where one part, his Los Pollos Hermanos empire, is entirely dedicated to avenging the other, his personal tragedy that occurred in Don Eladio's pool. Notice that even Hector Salamanca knew about it. He taunted Gus, using this pain as a weapon. Hector calls them Los Pollos Hermanos, and Lalo later calls Max Fring's boyfriend. These cruel hints, delivered at the moment of Max's murder, became the spark that ignited a war that would last decades. Gus's entire life after that is nothing but a slowly played out, meticulously planned revenge. I believe that even the scholarship Gus created in Max's honor is not just a PR stunt for cover. It is his personal public altar of grief that he uses to memorialize the loved one he lost. He masks the truth with a reasonable explanation that is perfectly acceptable to the public. This, in my opinion, is a perfect example of how Gus uses his image to transform his deepest personal pain into part of his unshakable, icy facade. Mike Ehrmantraut, this old, cynical cop, is always guided by his personal code and his desire to provide for his granddaughter, Kaylee. I think his fatalism is what distinguishes him from the other characters. He accepts his fate, no matter how dark, and unlike Jimmy, acknowledges the price of his actions. I have read extensively that his famous principle of no half measures was born from a deep trauma in his past. He let a man walk free whom he could have stopped, and that man later killed his wife. Mike swore he would never hesitate or leave unfinished business again. This oath condemns him to work with Gus and make the cruelest decisions. I think he accepted his fate long ago. He delivers a line that sounds like accepting a sentence when he agrees to work as Gus's bodyguard.
Loyalty goes both ways.
Look at this. He constantly tries to secure his granddaughter's future, which is his only moral goal. However, Mike's greatest tragedy, I believe, lies in the meaninglessness of his end. Analysts suggest that Walter killed Mike not because of the list of names, which he could have obtained from Lydia. Walter killed him out of pure irrational ego. He was envious of Mike, couldn't stand Mike's lack of respect, and was jealous of his relationship with Jesse. It wasn't a rational death dictated by business interests, but a capricious death caused by an emotional outburst. And pay attention to this. Mike, dying, puts an end to Walter's narcissism by refusing to listen to his rationalization. His last words, which I believe cut straight to the heart, show all of Walt's pettiness, even at the moment of the murder.
This whole thing could have been avoided.
Shut the fuck up. Let me die in peace.
His death in the dirt by the river is a meaningless culmination of a life dedicated to pragmatic, albeit dark measures that ultimately proved useless in the face of someone else's ego. Lalo Salamanca was not just another cartel villain. I think he was, as some say, Jimmy's dark shadow. He was the last necessary element of chaos that forced Jimmy to fully become Saul, to abandon the remnants of his moral core. If Gus was an exaggerated, cold-blooded version of Walt, then Lalo, I believe, was the more chaotic, charming, but incredibly ruthless analog of Jimmy, who enjoyed the game. His presence makes Jimmy deeply question why he is doing this at all. Remember when Huel asks Jimmy the most direct and painful question, one that pierces Saul's mask?
You're a lawyer. You make good money, right?
Good days and bad, but yeah.
Legit money, on the level.
Yeah, so?
Your wife's a lawyer? A legit lawyer?
Yeah.
Why you do all this?
Oh.
Jimmy cannot find an answer because in that moment he was no longer in control of Saul. He was doing it not out of need, but because he couldn't stop, because it was his internal evil. And here is the crucial moment in Jimmy's fall. After successfully securing bail for Lalo, a murderer, Jimmy explodes with rage, yelling at Howard,
Oh, don't you fucking owe Jimmy me.
I think that rage was not directed at Howard, who simply appeared at the wrong time. I believe it was pure self-loathing. He had just helped a notorious murderer walk free. He saw the tears of the victim's family in the hallway, and it forced him to finally hate himself. Saul had taken over, and Jimmy couldn't handle it. Lalo was the final push that drowned Jimmy in a sea of guilt and forced him to fully embrace the image of Saul. Now we descend to the most terrifying depth of the iceberg, to the figures on the periphery, whose presence adds to the horror. I conducted deep research and found a theory about Ed Galbraith, the vacuum cleaner man, that I find incredibly grim. Look at this. Ed gives people new identities so effectively that, as we see, even Mike or the federal government cannot find them. How is this possible? I think he doesn't just change documents. There are opinions that Ed is actually a hitman who deals not just with relocation, but with cleanup. If a client he helps becomes too hazardous or simply might blow the cover, Ed sells them on the idea of a new life, sends them into the void, and then simply eliminates them. This, in my opinion, transforms Ed from a savior into the final arbiter of fate. He is the gatekeeper. If you don't fit into his perfect system of silence, he eliminates you. Perhaps he was a former mobster or someone with a dirty past who specialized in disappearances. I think this adds an incredible, creepy irony to the entire universe. Escaping fate might actually be the final perfect con that leads to death. It's a world where even a second chance can turn out to be a fatal trap. In the period of Breaking Bad, many fans feared for Kim's fate, thinking she would be killed by the cartel. In the end, she faced not death, but something much, much worse. A life full of pain, penance, and work in a world completely devoid of color and meaning. But listen to this, and you will understand how deeply Kim is embedded in Saul's personality, even when she is not physically present. Even in the midst of his dirtiest work, Saul Goodman names his company Ice Station Zebra and Associates. Why? I think this is not just a silly name, as a casual viewer might assume. Ice Station Zebra is a code movie that he and Kim used for their first and most fun cons. It was the name of the fake company they invented to scam the guy who was flirting with Kim at the restaurant. By retaining that name, Saul clings to the memory of his toxic but beloved past with Kim. I believe that name is his personal, secret monument to the pain, and the only love he ever knew. Saul is just a mask worn to drown out that unbearable, constant ache. The fact that he keeps this reminder of her in his flashy, utterly fake world shows that he was never able to let her go. Ultimately, I believe this entire story boils down to one central theme that I derive from countless analyses: accountability and the need for closure. It doesn't matter whether Jimmy was always evil or whether he evolved into a villain under the influence of circumstances and Kim. What matters is how you deal with the consequences of your actions. I think Gene Takovich, who ultimately decides to surrender, does so not because he wants to redeem himself to society. He does it because he finally understands the most important truth. Without accountability and closure, you are never free from the burdens of your past. Look at this. His arrest and admission of guilt are not acts of heroism. It is the final desperate attempt to free himself from that heavy burden that haunts him even in the safety of Omaha. He wants to be free from the ghosts of Chuck, Howard, and Kim. And even if the numbers, as we have seen, point to his inevitable end, he can choose how that end will arrive. That, in my opinion, is the darkest but also the most liberating lesson from the Better Call Saul Iceberg.